Hello and welcome to episode 384 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. We are back for part two of a micro look, a play the best plays look with Michael Leone, our director of analytics, our translucent director of analytics. Michael, how's it going?
Good. Trying to get a little bit of sun here and there, but not too much.
Good. We don't want you to get burned. Can't have that. On today's show, we're going to do what we did in part one, except we're going to run through some more players and different players. We're talking rankings. We're talking micro strategy. We're not going to talk overall construction. There's so many articles up on the site about that. We've talked about that plenty. You can follow Leone's podcast, Establish the Edge, if you want to get into more deep virginity talk about structural edges. We are here to talk about players and where they should be ranked. Before we get into it here with part two, I want to remind everyone this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. I'm still in shock over how popular and big this Best Ball Mania tournament is. $25 buy-in, $2 million to first. Absolutely outrageous. Use promo code ETR when you sign up for a $100 matching deposit bonus. And if you buy our Draft Kit Pro, $10 for free, whether you have an Underdog account or not, will be added into your Underdog account by the end of June. Also, starting next Monday, I am going to be doing a podcast on here weekly called Market Mondays, where I talk about guys who have had the biggest ADP moves in the previous 7 days and what I think about them. Leone and I will be working together on that. Look for that next Monday. All right, Leone, part two. Let's start with the Chiefs wide receivers here from BS. BS says, why is MVS the lowest out of the three Chiefs wide receivers? We have Juju around 48th, Sky Moore around 94th, MVS 114th, and then back to Hardman at 133. BS wants to know why MVS is lowest of the three. Now, the bull case for MVS is very clear. I mean, MVS can do some of the things Tyreek Hill did, a poverty-stricken Tyreek Hill can do. He can go very deep. He's very fast. They gave him a huge contract, a bigger contract than they gave anyone else. He's allegedly been working very well with Patrick Mahomes at OTAs for whatever that is worth. The bear case on MVS is he had these chances with Aaron Rodgers and was like very rarely able to produce. Why, though, MVS, Leone, so far behind Juju and behind Sky Moore?
Yeah, I mean, at ADP, he might be the safest pick of the bunch, but what we're concerned about is the ceiling that he can achieve. And sometimes there's players like him, particularly some of these field stretchers, I think have a lot more real life value than they might have fantasy value. And it's because they cause a lot of pressure on the defense. They open up the offense quite a bit, but they're not target earners. And I'm just really concerned, is there a scenario if guys get hurt in front of him or anything where MVS is a 20% target share guy? And we don't think so. So that's our concern with MVS. We think he'll be really solid. I think he'll have some big spike weeks on big plays, but just don't see him earning, the requisite amount of targets versus Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to be running routes. I think as long as he's healthy, and there's definitely some question marks with Juju, but he should be running routes all game long. And even if his targets per route run is just mediocre and okay, he should earn a high teens target share. And he's someone that could potentially earn a 25% target share. And if you have that in your range of outcomes playing on this KC offense with Patrick Mahomes, that gives you a huge ceiling. Sky Moore is sort of right in the middle. He's a prospect that we liked a lot. A lot of sharp people were on. He's an early declare 3-year wide receiver breakout from a smaller school. We don't see a ton of those in the NFL. And he had the draft capital. So those are all really good signs that he's, a legitimately good wide receiver. So kind of have him slotted in between where there's some more uncertainty as far as what role he's going to earn out of the gate, but do think there's a ceiling that he potentially can hit on his talent that MVS can't.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with those takes. Earning targets is a skill. MVS has not shown an ability to earn targets at a high rate, where at least Juju we've seen it in his career for sure. Sky Moore, I know a lot of people like Sky Moore, and maybe Sky Moore ended up being good. So many teams that needed wide receivers passed on Sky Moore in the draft, which may not end up meaning much because he's playing with Patrick Mahomes, and I think that will make a big, big, big difference. But yeah, I kind of like where we have all three of these guys right now. Let's go to Nelly Biz. Nelly Biz says we're too low on Allen Robinson. Now, this one, I kind of think Nelly Biz has a case, but I know we've looked at this and we looked at this closely. We have Allen Robinson 64th overall. That's 18 spots behind ADP. My big thing on Allen Robinson is are you willing to throw out last year as just like completely wipe it off the slate? It never happened. He wasn't healthy. The offense was a total disaster. It was never going to win anyways. Yeah, he got out produced by Darnell Mooney, but he was like pouting the whole time. He didn't want to be there. Can you throw that out? Because if you completely throw that out, I do like Allen Robinson playing with so clearly best quarterback of his career in the Rams. They're going to score a lot of points. Allen Robinson is going to be a red zone threat, but we're way below on Allen Robinson. So talk to Nelly Biz, Leone.
Yeah. I mean, the bull case is definitely that, like you said, last year's a wash, improved efficiency with the quarterback play. And then, if something happens to Cooper Kupp, does he just completely kind of break the year and become a league winner? I am concerned from like a base perspective, though, that, we still have to factor in last year a little bit, especially as a wide receiver starts to age some. I mean, he's going to enter his age 29 season. So he's not old. He's not young. He's kind of in that in between Amari Cooper type range right now. And I mean, Cooper Kupp just takes such a huge amount of target share from that team. I expect that to continue on an offense that, they're not that pass happy, especially because they're a pretty good team. And a lot of that's game script dependent. That can be chaotic. Maybe they're not as strong of a team this year, but, fully expect them to be one of the better teams in the NFC. And you start trickling down that volume, and I'm just not sure it's there. I think you have to be pretty confident to take Allen Robinson in round 5 or so, where he's going, that last year's a wash. It's not just a range of outcome thing. Like, you have to almost fully assume that where he's going right now. We're not quite there.
Okay. One other Rams question from Duke. He wants to know about Cam Akers' ranking. He says Cam Akers should be one of the few 3-down backs left in the league. My take on Cam Akers was like, he could be a dead zone example. In other words, he's ranked where he is. We have him 39th overall, which is in line with ADP. He could just be there because of projectable volume, projectable carries. I mean, I'm not sure that Cam Akers is going to be efficient at all, and I'm not sure that Cam Akers is going to hold on to that volume all year. So my instinct is actually to be lower than ADP on Cam Akers, but we're right in line. What do you think about all that with Akers?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't have a great feel on Akers. I see arguments both ways. When we started the offseason, we were a bit higher on him than we are now. I actually thought he was going to be a decent value. But then some of the concerns you noted, we took into account, kind of have him right in line with ADP. The bull case is that we've seen McVay, seems like he wants a lead back to lean on. Even with Akers being rushed back from his Achilles in the playoffs, he wanted it to be Akers. Whether it was the offensive line, Akers not being ready, it didn't happen. It was a disaster. And we saw in the Super Bowl, the most valuable back for the Rams because they couldn't run the football was Darrell Henderson, who could catch the football. So the more I think about it, I am concerned that Henderson keeps that pass catching role. And now you're not looking at a 3-down back with Cam Akers. You're looking at a 2-down back that is going to be very reliant on efficiency and keeping that stranglehold on the rush share. So I think there's a wide range of outcomes on Akers. If you want to take him a little bit earlier, I understand that. If you want to completely avoid him, I understand it too. He's someone that I don't have a great feel on right now in this Rams offense.
Yeah, I think I'm going wide receiver or probably wide receiver. Or not Josh Allen, but yeah, not quite. Well, I mean, if he gets to 39th overall, and maybe, but I don't think I would. I think I'd be trying to go wide receiver over Cam Akers. Next one from Dom. He wants us to talk about Cole Kmet. He says more targets up for grab this year, and Cole Kmet had no TDs last year. Positive regression coming. I mean, the scheme can't be worse. Justin Fields can't be really much worse. Cole Kmet, we have him around tight end 14. His ADP is a little bit higher, around tight end 13. I mean, it's just hard for me to find a ceiling on a tight end in this Bears offense. Like, I would not want to go into a managed league with Cole Kmet as my starting tight end. I guess what I'm trying to say. What do you think about Cole Kmet this year?
Yeah, he's someone I've like quadruple checked this projection because I get where people are coming from. It looks low when you just look at the potential for targets for him. But I mean, we've got him with 17 to 18% target share in base, which is very high for a tight end. I understand he did that and even more at stretches last year, but for a base projection, that's a high number to clear for a tight end. We've got him with a decent sort of ceiling case. Like, again, it just circles back to what you said, this offense doesn't really look like it's going to support a really high ceiling tight end one. And maybe I'm undervaluing the potential of a new coaching staff and Justin Fields to take a leap. And this offense is a lot more exciting than we're projecting. But as it stands right now, I think he's just going to be okay. And you reach this range of tight ends where the floors on all the tight ends are bad and they're risky, that I would just rather, wait a little bit. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to take Kmet over like Albert O or someone that has, a truly meaningful ceiling if things break right, even though the volume's not as certain to start the year.
Oh, yeah. I think Irv Smith over Kmet for me. I would probably go, and I would. We have Freiermuth ahead of Kmet, which I agree with too. And so, yeah, there's definitely some options there if you're punting it off at tight end. Ideally, I wouldn't let it get that far, but yeah. I know. I'm interrupting the video. Wah. But if you're enjoying this video and want to see more fantasy football and DFS content like it, please just take 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Really does go a long way for us, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and now back to the show. Let's go to some Tampa stuff. So 2-part question here. Your mom thinks that we're too low on Russell Gage. He says Tampa Bay's offense can support 3 wide receivers, and Godwin is likely to miss time. Russell Gage is ranked below Garrett Wilson and Sky Moore, which is absurd. You can make a case that Russell Gage should be ranked above Tyler Lockett as well. And then a follow-up question, Colin says, why are we so bullish on Chris Godwin when the injury should shelve him for the first 4 to 6, possibly 8 weeks? So we have Russell Gage around 98th overall right now. I think that's in line with ADP. Chris Godwin we have around 53rd. I think, format is going to make a difference on the Godwin stuff. We expect Chris Godwin back sometime in October, and I guess that's a best case scenario maybe for him to be 100% come October. But yeah, obviously these injury things are tough. What do you think about how we have Gage and Godwin?
Yeah, so we're expecting Godwin to miss about the 9 months from his surgery date, which is early January. That puts him early October. So missing that 4 to 6 weeks range, hopefully closer to 4. I think he's a wide receiver that if he wasn't hurt would be going in round 2 this year, the way the landscape is. Like, I think he would be going that early. I mean, that's where Mike Evans has started to go in round 2. And I think Godwin, when they're both healthy, is the guy I'd slightly prefer over Mike Evans. So I think the ceiling's huge. Whenever you're taking someone like Godwin, you have to be cognizant of the structure of your team that you can survive those first handful of weeks. So if you're taking 9 wide receivers in best ball and 8 of them are guys that have pretty clear roles and whatnot, you're going to be fine, for 4 weeks without Chris Godwin. In fact, he's going to come back and start to get healthier when bye weeks start happening to other wide receivers when they start getting hurt. And it might even line up well. But if you're in a redraft league and you've taken 2 running backs early, you can't really take Chris Godwin. You just get smoked at wide receiver, and the flex spot is going to hurt you. So you got to be really aware of how you're building your team. With Russell Gage, I think he's just fine. We have him base target share of 16%, him seeing 100 target season, which is pretty good. We do have his efficiency buoyed by switching teams from Atlanta to Tampa Bay and playing with Tom Brady and how good they've been. I'm not sure what the huge ceiling case is on Russell Gage, maybe like a 20% target share, and he should be solid. He should be completely fine. I don't have anything really bad to say about him. I just think, ultimately there's 3 other targets in the passing game on Tampa Bay I'd rather have before Russell Gage, and that's Evans, Godwin, and Gronk.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was impressed last year by what I perceived to be a step forward in like ability and talent from Russell Gage. Like, he actually seemed to get better at going vertical. I mean, he had some huge games and just an absolutely putrid offense there in Atlanta. And now he has Tom Brady saying, hey, listen, we have to get a huge year out of Russell Gage because we're going to throw it so much. We're not going to have Chris Godwin for a while. Antonio Brown is gone. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for Russell Gage. I agree with you. He's not like some superstar. I mean, he's 6 foot, 184 pounds. He was a former 6th round pick, but he's only 26. I mean, I think Russell Gage can catch 5 to 7 balls a game, and that's pretty valuable. The ceiling case, I guess, on the guys that your mom mentioned, Garrett Wilson, Sky Moore, Tyler Lockett, is better. But I don't think it's that crazy to think that Russell Gage can have a really good base season and have a ton of usable weeks for you. So I'll just put that
Yeah.
up. One more Tampa question from Sean Nesty. He says, why do we have Rachaad White so high? So yeah, we're about 20 spots ahead of ADP on Rachaad White, have him around 89th overall. I mean, he's a round 3 rookie. They still have Gio Bernard. They still have Keyshawn Vaughn. I think there's a lot of negative talk around Lenny Fournette right now because he got like a fat picture or whatever, and he's 29 years old, and he's a running back. I get that. I feel like Lenny didn't have as much wear and tear on him as maybe some other running backs who are 29 years old, but he did touch the ball a ton in college, so maybe that's a bad take. But yeah, what do you think about being high on Rachaad White?
Yeah, we might switch some more to Lenny. We'll kind of see how the offseason plays out, but he is someone that we think could wrestle away some of the targets from Leonard Fournette in obvious passing situations. And it didn't seem like Gio was really able to do that much at all last season, except, maybe in that playoff game when it was down to him and Keyshawn Vaughn. So we're not really worried about Gio. And I mean, it's just a spot where I think you've got a pretty good idea at a clear handcuff that could completely be a league winner if Fournette were to get injured. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking like where we have, like Alexander Madison and whatnot. And we've got White, RB34. RB34 is probably a little bit rich. It comes down to whether or not you think he has some base role, but we just think the ceiling's so massive. And it's been harder, I think, to find handcuffs with that truly elite ceiling, just the way teams are operating nowadays with multiple backs and whatnot. And White is someone could do that.
Yeah, I mean, to Leone's point, last year, Leonard Fournette was the base back, and when he was healthy, he was the true 3-down plus goal line back on a team that throws so much and is in the red zone so much. I mean, his role was absolutely absurd. If you think White siphons off some of that, I can make a case that our ranking is fine. I think if you think Lenny survives, it's going to be too rich.
I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn and Giovanni Bernard scored 40 fantasy points in that game without Leonard Fournette in the playoffs. And then Fournette comes back the next week and scores 30. And so, I mean, the high value touches in this backfield are absurd compared to any other team that it's kind of wanting to take shots. I do think RB34, maybe we'll knock them down. There's a little bit of wish casting there that there might be some base role that is probably a little bit more optimistic than it is in reality, but do think he should be inside the top 40 backs because the pure upside is just better than a lot of these guys. And a lot of the times that you're drafting at that point, that's what you should be most focused on.
All right, let's go to Bolts Chief. Bolts Chief says DK Metcalf is too low. He has a chance for massive volume, and talent has a history of overcoming bad quarterback play. Lockett and Fant will get theirs, but DK Metcalf's profiles is more compatible with Geno, Locke, Baker, Jimmy G, or whoever. So Metcalf, we're like 8 or 9 spots behind ADP. We have him 52nd overall. I think that's largely due to quarterback play, but what do you think about Bolts Chief's point that, hey, good talent overcomes bad quarterback play at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I mean, he's someone who struggled to out-target Tyler Lockett 2 seasons in a row.
Bible narrative, but yes.
And people talk about how he's a better fit with Geno Smith that Metcalf is, and the numbers actually show Tyler Lockett was targeted much more frequently with Geno Smith than DK Metcalf was. So I think that's just being more hopeful than it is in reality. I do like betting on talent, but the gap between these two receivers is massive. At one point, it was like a 26 wide receiver gap. I think it's tightened up a little bit, mostly because Metcalf has fallen in ADP more so than Lockett's risen, which is probably accurate. But I'm really worried about this offense. I understand the bet on talent, but this is an offense that we have running 4 more plays per game than last year, Adam. And that still puts them dead last in our projections by a full play per game. And this is now you've got a huge quarterback downgrade, absolute boomer coach. They're going to want to run the ball. They're not going to be good. I mean, I very rarely say situations are stayaways, but I'm pretty concerned with this one. I don't even really want to draft Lockett, but at wide receiver 40, I feel like you almost have to consider Lockett because the base target share is so high, but I don't know. I'm worried about Seattle.
Well, a lot of times with these really bad teams, you can start to project higher throw rates because they're going to be trailing so much. But I feel like even when Pete Carroll and this team gets behind by 20, they're still not going to be aggressive throwing the ball. And it's still not going to be aggressive throwing the ball downfield. So it's like you don't even get that aspect of it. So
yeah, Pete's not going to deal with Drew Lock throwing, balls into double coverage the whole second half, no matter what the score is.
Go to a question from DKB. He says, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on David Montgomery. He's going like 2 rounds earlier on DraftKings and drafters compared to Underdog, and I don't know what to make of it. So we're kind of in line with market on David Montgomery, around 40 overall or so. I don't really have a strong take on David Montgomery. His role is obviously very good. He's feasted in really good matchups, and he's been kind of like a DFS cash play, quite frankly, when he's been priced right and in the right matchup. I do, DKB makes the point about DraftKings and drafters compared to Underdog. Underdog is going to be way, way, way more wide receiver heavy for whatever reason. And also Underdog is going to be, I think, a little bit tougher rooms than DraftKings and drafters in places like that. But yeah, what do you think about where we have David Montgomery?
Yeah, there's backs like him and Josh Jacobs where I think on DraftKings drafters, full PPR sites, when they're going as aggressive as, the questioner said, I think they're pretty easy fades in the dead zone there, where wide receiver or different backs going to be a better option. On Underdog, where it's half PPR, and it's not that these guys, won't catch the ball at all, but relative to the wide receiver value, it helps the running back value to be half PPR, where they're going in rounds 5, 6. I feel like I don't have a strong take. It just seems completely neutral there, where you're taking on some risk because they're prototypical dead zone backs, but it's late enough in the dead zone that these guys in previous years, I think, would be going where they're going on DraftKings and drafters in round 4 or so. That, I'm hard pressed to tell someone that they're bad picks in round 6. They just seem neutral to me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hit on another running back. We had a question from Michael. He says, what's the Saquon Barkley ceiling this year? And we've been talking about Saquon Barkley, 17th overall, I think, is where we have him right now. His ADP is certainly climbing. I know that he could get him in the 3rd round at one point, and now I think he's going in the 2nd round. I mean, he's getting, I think, the biggest scheme and coaching upgrade in the entire league, going from these absolute stone cold donkeys that the Giants had to Brian Daboll. I also think that in today's NFL, like Saquon Barkley's skill set, so good in the pass game as a receiver and the goal line back and like the base back. And he's now will be another full year removed from the ACL tear. You can make a case that may have limited him a bit last year. So there's like a lot going for Saquon Barkley this year. The archetype of a player who can actually finish legitimately as the best player in all of fantasy. Like Saquon Barkley is the archetype of that. Whether he can hit that, I don't know anymore because his efficiency has been so bad. But yeah, I like being aggressive on him, man. Like I have no problem with Saquon Barkley in round 2. What do you think about where we have him?
Yeah, I was aggressive on him. I did a podcast with Sean Siegel, who I from RotoViz, who I think is really sharp. He's in on Barkley. That gave me even more confidence that I think 2-3 turn, he's a smash. I think anywhere in round 2, honestly, he's a pretty good play. I think in redraft, I could see doing some hero RB builds around Barkley. It comes down to how nervous and risk averse you are because of injuries the last couple of seasons. And 1, if you think he's more injury prone than other players because of that. And 2, if you think that he will never be his old self because of that. And it certainly makes sense to layer in some of that risk. But man, Adam, if you take those injuries away and you're just looking at situation and perceived talent for Barkley, he's the top 3 pick, top 5 pick. I'm not exaggerating. That's, if you're willing to have some blinders on with the injury stuff, that's where he would be going. So, and then you throw in the coaching staff change, and I'm really optimistic that at the very least, it's going to be better. How much better? I don't know. I think it could be a lot better, but even if it's a little bit better, if Barkley stays healthy, he's going to be a smash this year.
Yep. Okay. Next question is from Greg. Greg is actually my tennis coach. Shout out to Greg. Doing a great job getting me ready for my matches. Greg says, why isn't Amari Cooper higher, even if he's stuck with Jacoby Brissett? So we have Amari Cooper 54th overall. We're like 5 spots behind ADP on Amari Cooper. At this point, man, I don't even know what to think about the Deshaun Watson stuff anymore. I think it's greater than 50% that he misses the entire year. The NFL tries to throw the book at him, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Baker Mayfield's going to be gone. So, like, I think that the ranking with Jacoby Brissett is fine. The ranking though is going to look bad if Deshaun Watson ends up playing. So how are you thinking about Amari Cooper right now?
Yeah, I mean, his efficiency has fallen off the last 2 seasons from what it was when he first was in Dallas, those first year and a half in Dallas when it was really, really strong. It feels like he's been around forever. He's not an old wide receiver. It's only his age 28 season, so he's not old, but when you do see that efficiency drop off, and now you've got a team switch from a pretty favorable environment to what could be a very suboptimal environment, especially if the team play calling, they could be running the football so much if it's Jacoby Brissett at the helm for the majority of the season, that even if the target share is strong for Amari Cooper, like it's going to be tough for him to hit a really high ceiling. I'd much rather take a shot at David Bell to, lower ADP by a ton, someone who's going to be a shorter ADOT guy. And I think he could really surprise, and he might fit in better if the offense is forced and handcuffed to operate a certain way without Deshaun Watson.
Okay. Last one to hit on is a question from George. He says, I'd be interested to hear about the process for ranking free agent wide receivers, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, Will Fuller. I know this is something that we've struggled with. It's certainly hard. I mean, not only do we not know where these guys will play, we don't know if they'll play. I mean, I haven't heard any updates on Will Fuller, who basically missed the entire season with some weird finger thing last year. We've been aggressive in moving these guys up because as soon as they sign, I mean, they're going to get massive ADP boosts. So if you think that they are going to sign, well, yeah, it makes sense to be aggressive on them. We're at 162 on Will Fuller. That's 41 spots ahead of ADP. We're at 166 on Julio Jones. That's 72 spots ahead. The one we were actually behind on is Odell, not as much. We have him 201st overall. That's behind ADP. Odell, I think, is going to go back to the Rams, but he's not going to be ready until November, December. And I mean, that's really late to try to work a guy back in and get him to be really productive. So yeah, maybe help out George here. How are we baking in all of the various things going on with guys like Julio, Will Fuller, Odell?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really hard projection to make. You're just kind of taking a best stab at it. And these are guys that we're more kind of cognizant of where the ADP is and sort of just slotting them in where we want a little bit more so just because there's not a lot to work off of. But you look at what happened with Jarvis Landry, who we had ranked well ahead of ADP. We're behind ADP a decent bit on Landry now because the second he signed, he moved up 3 rounds. Mm-hmm. And if you're getting Julio and Will Fuller for basically free, I mean, they're coming rounds. You can get them in round 17. So I would draft them after our ranking, somewhere in between our ranking and ADP. But you can get them at round 16 to 18. Again, you want to be aware of the type of team you're drafting because if you draft too many of these guys, you have a lot of risk at the front of the season. But if you don't have that risk at the front of the season, they make a ton of sense. Julio, he could sign anywhere. If he signs in the worst possible spot, worst case is his ADP is unchanged. Most likely it's going to move up a couple rounds. I think Julio is much more likely. I don't see the tail risk of him not playing at all that I see with Will Fuller. But I also see less of a huge win on Julio that I see with Will Fuller. And that's why we have them ranked pretty similarly, where Julio is very likely to give you a couple rounds of ADP value, up to you to determine how valuable that is for you. And then Will Fuller's the swing. If he winds up in the right spot, he goes to Green Bay or something, he's going in the first 10 rounds if he goes to Green Bay. I mean, that's huge. But there's some risk that he doesn't sign at all because I haven't heard too much what's going on, and it does seem like there's more of an unknown to the Will Fuller side of things.
I mean, I think the NFL might think that Julio Jones is just done and not worth whatever headache, and he can't really be an effective NFL starter anymore. Will Fuller can I know we haven't seen him play in a long time, but man, he was absolutely shredding with Deshaun before that stupid PED suspension. So yeah, like Leone said, I don't know what's going on with Will Fuller. I'm actually, now that you mentioned, I'm going to do some digging here. Maybe I can find something out about Will Fuller for us. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. And so weird that he sat out all of last year. And why? I mean, Green Bay not signing him at this point is weird to me too. So we'll see. All right. That's going to do it for part 2 of this micro look at our rankings. I like this much more than trying to grind out an extra 1% edge because you took a running back in round 13 instead of a running back in round 10. I got to tell you, I'm on team play the best plays. I know a lot of you guys out there are as well. Hope you enjoyed this. Maybe we can circle back and do this again closer to the season if you guys have more questions about why we have guys ranked where they are ranked. Be sure you're following Leone on Twitter at 2hats1mike. Be sure you subscribe to his podcast, Establish the Edge, and our YouTube, where you can find Leone doing TikTok videos, etc., etc. For Leone, for Jerry, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.